The information given on this program is not, nor is it intended to be legal advice. You should consult an attorney for individual advice regarding your own situation. Legal Help Live is brought to you by Pan's Restaurant and Coffee Shop at 6710 La Tierra Boulevard in Los Angeles. Barney's Beanery at 8447 Santa Monica Boulevard in Hollywood. iLearnFast.com, a division of CityCom, and Rodolfo Buonacorte at www.rodolfobuonacorte.com.
Hey everybody, it's time for Legal Help Live. I am Ralph and that's Steve. We're here to talk about some very interesting things here on Legal Help Live. And Steve, what are we doing today?
Well, last week we covered all kinds of issues of homeowners and home problems. This week we're going to cover, are you insane? Are you nuts? Are you crazy? Or are you a little bit different? I could remember.
And what's the difference?
Well, do you go to jail? Do you get off? Do you get into an institution? Are you homeless? Lots of problems. I remember the picture of Phil Spector, the fellow with the big hair.
You remember the specter of Phil.
Right, and he was a little different, but he may well have been crazy. He may well have been nuts, and he was transformed into a shooting situation and is serving time in prison now. Insanity, people with problems is a big issue in California, in the world. We've got cyberbullying problems going on. We've got mass shooting problems going on. We've got all kinds of mental health issues. And we all face them every day. We're going to have some exciting guests on here. We're going to have a trial lawyer who deals with insanity issues. We're going to have a medical health professional so that you people out there can ask your questions about some of the mental problems. What do you do?
I think that's the very high interest. That's the question. What do we do with mentally ill who should have some form of independent living? What kind of assistance do we give those people? Do we have an adequate mental health system? Are we failing those people who are mentally ill? And if we are, and if we don't have an adequate mental health system, what do we do in this 21st century?
You know, what does a family do who has, and we all have it, we all have a relative, and just think about your family, who's got mental problems, maybe bipolar, maybe schizophrenic, doesn't get along, has problems. You take him to a doctor, take him to a psychiatrist. If you have some insurance, or if you have a little money, you get medication. The person doesn't stay on the medication. The person acts out, creates problems, wants to be on the street, ends up being homeless, comes back home. You just can't deal with it. What does a family do? Who do they turn to? What's the problem? If you don't get control of the person, and maybe you can't, that person generally ends up in jail, not in a mental facility, but in jail. Is that the right place for a person who's acting out?
Sometimes they end up on the street. And I'm not sure which is worse, to tell you the truth.
Now, this is a live call-in show. It's 1-800-405-4222. So if you've got any questions about your family members and what we do with mental illness problems, your loved ones, if you've got problems yourself, if you're facing whether you got insurance coverage to give you this. I mean, if you're rich and famous, everybody's going to take care of you. But if you're not, if you're like the rest of us, if you're the Saltsmans and the Solomons of the world, or the Joe Sixpacks, where do you turn? You know it's difficult to turn to the federal government because you can't get through on the websites.
Oh, God, yes.
But where do you turn? What do you do?
And you know what? If you've got experience in that regard, if you've gone through the system, if you have a relative who has gone through the system or should have gone through the system but couldn't get there, maybe we should find that out too. Maybe now is a really good time for you to call and address that issue by telling us about your own personal experience or the experience of a family member. And again, that's a toll-free number, 1-800-405-4222. You call in and give us your experiences and maybe ask us for a comment, and I'll bet we have a comment to give back to you.
And the mental health problem is just doesn't affect individuals. It affects society. We are in America and all over the world and in California, we have these mass shootings going on. And in almost every one of them, whether the person's 12-year-old or whether the person is an Army official, they've all got mental problems. In one of the recent cases, the person was having delusions. And another one went into an institution, they threw him out. They end up, so we're talking about gun control problems. Not only is mental illness a problem, but it creates problems with all these mass shootings. And what about cyberbullying that's going on today? We've got...
very, very dangerous. Very, extremely dangerous, and something that you and I didn't have to experience growing up.
So we have people on the internet bullying people or bullying them in person, and now we're having a number of young people committing suicide because they can't take the stress of their peer group. They can't take the stress of being harassed on the internet. What do we do about that? Do we turn off all the computers? I mean, how do we solve those problems? And how do we, once we diagnose somebody that they've got a problem, how do we treat them? Who pays for all this? Is it the taxpayers? Is it covered by insurance?
Well, there are various levels of society out there. One of the levels is almost always covered by reason of the fact that these are fairly wealthy people. There's another level of society that is treated fairly well because they are completely at the mercy of taxpayer dollars, and as a result of that, if they are able to take advantage of services that are available, they can. But then there's a fairly large group in the middle that can't particularly afford massive medical bills for mental health issues, some of which may be covered by this new insurance concept out of the federal government, some may not. And what do we do with that very large and worthy group of people who make money, who are out there earning a living, trying to put their kids through school, and they face some very significant and sometimes very dangerous mental health issues from someone in their family? Now, what do we do with those people?
And a lot of these people don't end up in mental institutions because we really don't have mental institutions anymore. The commitment process civilly is shame on you, shame on us. There's a hold if you're in danger to yourself or danger to others. It might be up to 72 hours. In most instances, the person walks out of the institution after being there for 24 hours or 48 hours.
Yes.
There is a process to keep them there, but because of everyone's civil rights today, most people get out, and then they get involved in a robbery or a stick-up or a petty theft or a bad check or a fight, and they end up in the jail system. And in the jail system, they end up in county jail or prison where we don't give them any treatment.
Well, I've heard recently the prisons now are described as the 21st century equivalent of insane asylums. They have replaced the 18th and 19th century horrible insane asylums. Steve, we've got a call, and I want to take that from. Is that Joanne? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Joanne, welcome to Legal Help Live.
Thank you. You partially already answered my question, but what if you have an older adult family member who is refusing help?
That's your question.
Yes, and how do you get? Is there any legal way to get them help?
This is a family member. Did I hear that right?
Yes, a family member.
Okay.
We can go through the process if, in fact, if they can't control themselves and their property. You can go through a process to get a conservator appointed. Then the conservator can act in their benefit and make some moves to try and help out. does the family have money to pay for things? Is there insurance
Right.
involved? And in most instances, there's very little insurance coverage.
Well, it sounds like there's a conflict. We've got the person who's the potential patient or person who's going to have a guardian in a conservatorship situation, not wanting to go through that process. And we've got family members who think that that's appropriate and that's the responsible thing to do. So now we've got a controversy. Do we have a judge make this decision?
They probably do have a judge in most instances. The problem is going to be there's going to be an attorney probably appointed for the person who doesn't want to be there. There'll be an attorney for the conservator, and there may be someone in the DA's office or in the public's office, somebody on that side to try and get an answer. It's not an easy situation. It's a painless situation. The person
Right.
doesn't know they're ill, and in fact, if they're schizophrenic, they may think they're great. They may think they're fine. If they're manic depressive, one day they're singing opera, and the next day they're digging their own grave. This is a great
This
question.
is more about dementia.
Well, dementia is another situation.
But the same process exists. The same process exists.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there should be a conservator appointed. So the same process exists. A judge is going to make that determination.
Right.
It can be an adversarial process if we've got the subject person not wanting to go into any institution or receive any help. That person thinks they're fine. In reality, they don't remember what day it is particularly, and maybe there should be a conservatorship appointed, and that's for experts to be relied on by a judicial officer, and that judge will make the determination. That exists.
In most instances, the person does not want to go into any institution, does not believe there's a problem. And when you meet them, they may convince you that there is no problem. They may have
Exactly.
good memory situation. You put them in a courtroom, they may do great. They'll be the same age as the judge usually, and they'll relate. They've got good past memory. They have most times of being lucid, and it's not easy. It's a real situation, But the next thing that happens is they don't want to go in. They don't want to get a job. They have no money, and now we see them on the streets. We have thousands and thousands of people living on the streets of Southern California who are homeless. And why are they homeless? Either a large majority of them have mental illness problems, a large majority of them have alcohol or drug problems, and so now we've got our streets filled with people that do not believe they have a problem, will not go into any facility, and there are no answers to a lot of these things.
Well, here's
lots of questions.
I'm sorry. Here's what we do know. We do know that there's a judicial process if necessary. So if we have a controversy, the first thing you do after you seek medical attention and a discussion with psychiatric caregivers, the next thing to do after that is contact legal counsel. And if necessary, sad as it is, sometimes the legal process has to be engaged. That's why those judges sit in those courtrooms.
But in reality, you've got 3 family members. Each one's got a different opinion, and most family members do not want to stand up and put their mother in some kind of an institution. If you've got 3 sisters, each one of them has a different opinion what to do. And which family member is going to step up and say, Mom goes into the home, when the other 2 say, no, no, no?
Now, what Steve is saying is absolutely true. Sometimes the controversy involves a disagreement between siblings, all of whom have the utmost care and desires for the parent. But sometimes that's the nature of that type of controversy. So you've got more than one part to this. It's not a 2-part problem. It's a multi-part problem.
It seems hard even when people agree about the situation.
Even if everybody agrees. Except for the potential patient. That's true. Joanne, we're gonna say goodbye. Thank you very much for the call.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. And do we have time for another caller? I'm gonna say yes. Let's bring in Louise.
Hi, Louise. Welcome to Legal Help Live. How can we help you?
Do we still have Louise? Can we bring back Joanne?
Well, the history of mental health in California is kind of sad. We had mental hospitals.
We
Hello?
used to. Oh, is that Louise?
Hello?
You're on the
Louise,
air.
come on in. You're
on
live
TV.
on Legal Help Live.
Hi, I have a neighbor who I would call crazy. I don't know what his actual diagnosis might be, but sometimes he comes over very warm and friendly, and other times he's not only threatening me, doesn't like when I walk my dog close to his property, threatens my gardeners for making noise. And I really don't know how to handle the situation because he's so volatile. I'm afraid to go to the police and maybe making him more angry. I just never know what his mood's going to be.
Well, here's what you can do in that situation. There's a civil harassment facility set up in most courthouses in Southern California. It's a 3 or 4 page petition that you fill out. And their self-help places show you how to do it. You set forth the facts of that this person is dangerous and how and what they're doing. You can walk right into the courtroom after that. If there's any danger involved or stalking or violence, there's no fee filed, fee request that has to be paid. It can be served afterwards by the police department or the sheriff's department for free. A judge will look at it right away and determine whether you can get a temporary restraining order. Law enforcement serves it on the individual. It's usually stay away from you or your house or your property by 20 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, or 100 yards, depending on what the circumstances are. If they violate that and you call the police, it's put into a computer system, and the police will take the person away.
I think the point is this. You're afraid to do something, but you really, under these circumstances, what you just described, you can't do nothing. You have to do something. And there is, as Steve is telling us, there is a judicial process designed for exactly this type of problem, to keep people separate, to make sure that the potential problem stays away from the potential victim. So the process does exist, and I think it's important for you to know that so that you could take advantage of it, so that you can receive some protection. Because, again, you can't just do nothing and expect the problem to go away. From what you described, it's not just going to go away by itself.
And the process also takes their guns away from them. It goes into a database. So if you travel someplace and they appear and you have the order with you, the police can check it out to make sure it's still valid. It's generally good for 3 years, and it will get the person off your doorstep, away from you. If they violate it for the first time, it's a misdemeanor. They could get up to a year in jail or $1,000 fine. So there's real.
It's got
fat.
teeth.
It's got teeth.
Yeah.
And
Very
you should seek this kind of situation if you've got any question about a fearful neighbor or somebody in the community that's harassing you. It's similar to the gang injunctions, but it's quicker and much more expeditious and much more informal, and you don't need a lawyer to do it.
Okay, Louisa,
Well, thank you so
I
much.
hope
Thank you.
you're very, very welcome. I hope that helps, and I hope that you stay safe, and that's really what we're after under these circumstances. We got time for one more before our break? All right, let's bring Victoria in. Victoria, come on and talk to us. Victoria?
Hello.
Hello, Victoria. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
We're okay. What can we do to help you today?
So it's kind of similar. I live in an area, it's a nice area, but I live close to a grocery store, and I walk to the grocery store to get groceries, and there's sort of a little gang of homeless people that hang out, and most of them are okay, but they sort of hang together, and sometimes they can be a problem, and they harass people, and it can be quite scary. And I heard what you were saying about getting a restraining order and all that, but the problem is they migrate. I mean, they all stay in the same area, but they seem to know the patterns of when the police come and when they don't, and when there's a good time to panhandle and when is not. And some of them are truly crazy. I know one of them thought, because it's probably my fault for having a regular schedule, I suppose, but one of them had it in their head that we had a relationship. I mean, it's insane. And so I'm scared sometimes that they're going to take it to, I don't know, attack me or something. And it seems like a lot, like it's only, the law is only reactive in some way, in practical, realistic terms of what I can do. If I get hurt, then they'll take them away. But before that, nothing.
Victoria.
Great question.
Yeah, it's an excellent question.
And you should be sounds like you're a realistic philosopher, because what she's saying is true. In most instances, the law does not act until something happens.
Here's what we got to do. Do I hear do we have to go on break right now? Okay, we're going to take a break. Victoria, we're going to answer your question when we come back from our break. We'll have a guest, Pete Lynette, at that point. We'll ask him that very same question, and we'll see if we can get you an answer. So don't leave. Stay on. You can hang up, but keep watching, and you'll get the answer after our break. Folks, we do have to take a break. We'll be back in just a little bit on Legal Help Live.
Stay tuned for more Legal Help Live.
Giving a little can mean a lot to people who are hungry and homeless. Victims of domestic violence need help every day.
I'm here to volunteer.
Together, we can do it. If you do one thing, take one step to help those who need it the most in your community. You just might find that you can bring a smile to those who need it the most. Share your caring at opcc.org.
Looking for something to do this week? You could visit the California Heritage Museum. The museum is open every Wednesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. till 4. Stop by and catch our latest exhibit, find unusual gifts in the museum shop, and picnic on the lawn. We're a block from the beach at Ocean Park Boulevard and Main Street in Santa Monica. The California Heritage Museum. Discover us.
When I grow up, I want to help animals. When I grow up, I want to help animals. When I grow up, I want to help animals.
Lady lives in a nice area.
I just heard part
Tom is my brother.
She passes
He
a knot.
always made me laugh.
She passes a knot of homeless
Tom is my
people, but
firstborn.
there's one,
I taught him how to drive.
perhaps one person.
Tom is my
she's
son.
becoming afraid of because
At 20, he was diagnosed with
aggressive,
schizophrenia.
and
The illness took him to the
communicates with her,
street, and we
and
feared
it's
we
like
lost
he
him
thinks she's
forever.
got some relationship
But I got help
with
from
her.
Step Up on Second, and today I have a home.
You do.
And my friends and family are back in my life.
Is that okay?
Step Up on Second, rebuilding lives one step at a time.
We are back. Legal Help Live. Ralph here, Steve there, and we are honored to have a guest with us. Pete Lynette, he's the founder and CEO of Life Adjustment Team. That was founded in 1977. Pete's also been at UCLA Research Center for Psychiatric Rehabilitation. In 1991, Pete started the Westside Mental Health Provider Network. Pete is in the middle of our mental health safety net.
And he's surrounded by two nuts.
So you should feel at home. Welcome, Pete.
Well, thank you for having me.
When we left to take our break, we had a question from Victoria, who was asking about the following scenario. When she walks away from her house to perhaps a supermarket, she passes a knot of people who live on the street, one of whom seems to be very aggressive, has communicated with her, seems to think that there's a relationship between the two. She's becoming quite frightened. And I said, you know what? Our next guest will be able to answer that question. Pete, what do you think?
Well, I think that's a really difficult situation, and most people aren't equipped to handle that sort of thing. What I suggest is talk to the store owners or the merchants in that neighborhood, because if it's a problem for that one person, it's probably a persistent problem, and some attention needs to be put on it. So I would talk to the local merchants to see if there's other people that would need some help with that. Or they might have someone come out and check that out.
You know what? Honestly, I wouldn't have thought about that, and I think that's a very wonderful and practical answer. Thank you.
Well, but in your professional background, how often does a person who thinks they're having a relationship with this woman, she doesn't even know him, she just goes there, I guess, to comes home, picks up the bus or whatever it is, do they get violent or do they create a problem?
Well, I think you make a lot of assumptions about where a person is coming from or what their intention is. Statistically, people with mental illness do not commit more violent crimes than people that don't have a mental illness. It just makes the news a lot quicker. And it seems to be at the root of some of these more newsworthy problems that we've had in society with the shootings and things.
That's for sure. You know what? We've already got another call. Maybe we should take the next call. Jasmine? Jasmine?
I'm here.
Jasmine, talk to us.
Hi.
What can we do for you?
Thank you guys for having this show. Without you guys, I probably would be lost. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening and watching.
Thank you. So my question is, I recently was into a child support, child custody case with my daughter's biological father. He has been out of her life, in and out, throughout everything, and I've been the sole provider. I've never asked for child support, never required it, but now I want to know how I go about everything because he has money, lawyers, everything seems to be going his way, and I'm just pretty lost.
Okay, so the father's on the birth certificate?
If he was out there when I gave birth to her.
Are you on a cell phone?
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
I can hear every third word, which is really not enough to get a good question.
So why don't we do this? The question really is, as I understand it, and maybe we'll have you answer. We'll answer you off the air. There's a biological father. He's not paying child support, and you want to get child support. Is that basically the question?
Pretty much. I just want to figure out how to go about everything and just see what I can do. What rights do I have?
And how old's the child?
He's 8 years old now.
Okay, and is the father listed on the birth certificate?
Yes.
All right. This is not a difficult situation. In most instances, you go see an attorney who does divorce and child support. You can get a referral to a lot of different lawyers. If the father has money, the court will, after filing a petition, will order some temporary support, order your attorney's fees to be paid for, and there's a bunch of questionnaires that the father has to fill out. They'll ascertain the assets, what the needs are of you and your son, and you should be able to get child support. Is the child living here in California and with you?
She lives with me. She's always lived with me.
Okay.
He opened the case for the child support and child custody. It's currently open, pending, but
Do you have a lawyer?
It's paid me, and I haven't received anything.
Do you have a lawyer?
I don't have a lawyer.
That's the problem.
Okay, you need to get a lawyer. Let's get real. You can't, this is sort of like the self-help that you can't do. You need to get a lawyer. So if you can call the number on the air here and give us a call, and we'll try and refer you to one of these inexpensive legal referral panels that'll get you to a lawyer that'll get involved in the case and try and get the attorney's fees from the other side.
Jasmine, don't call the number until we finish broadcasting today, or you'll circle back and talk to us live again. You want to talk to our office at 1-800-405-4222. That's the number on the screen. When we finish broadcasting today, then call that number. Let them know that you spoke with us and why you are calling that number when you do. And Steve and I both wish you really good luck, Jasmine. Thank you for calling Legal Help Live. All right, let's go to phones again. Diane. Is it Diane or Diana?
It's Diana.
Diana, welcome to Legal Help Live.
Thank you so very much. My question is, my 12-year-old daughter's classmate is good when she's on her medications, but when she's not, she's violent. So I'm afraid to let my daughter play with her, and her parents don't seem to care. What can be done?
We all turn to Pete.
Well, again, what you want to do is talk to the people that can form sort of a mastermind to think through the problem. That might be the educators, the teachers, principals, guidance counselors at schools. If the other child's parents won't cooperate, I think you really need to pull the school system in to work on that kind of problem.
Yeah, well, what do you do when is there bullying going on too, or does the young person get violent? Is it only at school, or is it other places?
Diana?
Other places. Other places, yeah. Just her life in general, when she's not on her medications.
And does this person live close to you, or neighbors, or?
Not very close, but, you know, I'm concerned for my daughter and for the health of the other child.
And the parents of the child don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
So what do you do there? The parents don't want to do anything. They've got allegedly control. And let's assume the school stays out of it. Now she's got a situation where she's got a potentially violent child reacting with her child. What can we do?
Well, again, it would seem to me that that child that's having trouble off of the medicine is probably impacting a lot of other kids too. So there's other parents that are concerned. That's why I say you got to get as many people together to solve this kind of problem as you can.
Have you dealt with this in your kind of?
More so in the community. When we have a problem in the community with someone that lives in an apartment building, for instance, and the neighbors are upset, we have to do, you know, a little bit of negotiating and advocating for the patients. But the same sort of thing. You just have to pull the community together around the person that's experiencing the problem so that it can be addressed properly.
Sort of a strength in numbers circumstance.
You know, you probably should start knowing how the school system works or doesn't work. You got to start up at the highest level you can. So you've got to start with the principal's office or the superintendent's office if it's a small school district and explain what the problem is and get the system wedded to try and solve this problem. They're set up to do it. They have an obligation to give you a safe place to go to school. And so you got to start there, and you can keep your child at least away from this person when she's not in school. I mean, that's something you'd want to do as a parent anyway.
Yeah, it's a shame. I agree with Steve. I think there has to be some level of separation, even though these kids want to be friends, and even though the other little girl is just fine some of the time, but some of the time she's not. And also, what Pete says about strength in numbers, I think that's also very significant. If a group of parents approach the principal with the same problem at the same time, it lends credibility and it lends a significance and importance to the person who's listening, that is the principal. So I think Pete's idea is very good, and I think Steve's idea is good as well.
One step further, if the parents want the child to take the medication and the child doesn't want to take the medication, which is something that goes on a lot, how do you get the child to take the medication? What do you do there?
Well, that's such an individual situation. You have to understand why someone doesn't want to take the medicine.
It
so
makes
it's really
me
hard
loopy. It makes me sleepy. I don't feel like I've got the gusto. It mellows me out.
That's the whole plan,
you know,
Steve.
And I like being manic. Damn it! How do you get them to take the meds?
Well, the problem is that you're wanting to keep some of the symptoms that you like, and you're not wanting the side effects that you don't like. So,
I understand that, but I won't take my meds. What do you do? What do your professionals do? The people that go out there and try and treat the person. What do you do? Is there a solution other than tying me down and sticking pills down me?
The solution usually comes from a relationship that has to be developed over time, and the trust between the doctor and the patient, sometimes the family member and the patient. I've even had patients that really don't admit that they have a mental illness, but will take medicine because mom and dad want them to, or because it makes everybody a little more calm. Even though they can't admit to themselves that they have a mental illness, they will cooperate.
So if you're rich and can afford the doctors and the therapist, you may get some help. What does regular people do who can't afford to pay the $275 an hour for the psychiatrist or the therapist? Where do they get the help, or don't have insurance that covers this? Where is this help? How do I find the help? That's the questions I get a lot.
Well, there's sort of three levels that you can think about that. One is there's programs for people that are homeless and mentally ill, like the Village in Long Beach. It's a nationally known program. There's an organization called NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. All the services are free, and it's mostly educational and supportive for families. And then the Department of Mental Health offers a lot of free services through D.D. Hirsch and through Edelman Center. And we do have a lot of mental health services that are provided free of cost to people.
Pete, that raises another question. how does one find out about what services are available? Because you just named some institutions, one of which is familiar, but many aren't. How do people find out where to go?
Probably the first call would be to NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. I don't have that number with me, but it's easy to find, and they have an office in West Los Angeles. And there's a NAMI chapter almost in every part of the city and every part of the state and country.
Okay,
And
excellent.
they usually have good resources. If you go on the NAMI website, there's a list of call numbers for every kind of emergency you could possibly run into.
Valuable information.
And for those of you out there, write this down, dmhc.ca.gov, which is the Department of Mental Health something or other, and it has an entire list of providers that are free. So that's dmhc.ca.gov. And it's on the web. You can find it. It lists the area. It lists all these various types of groups that you can go to. If you have difficulty getting it, email us or call the 800 number and leave your email address or your number, and we'll get you back that citation to the website.
More good information. Okay, I want to take another call. We're going to have to take a break eventually, but we've got time for Josephine. Josephine, come on and talk to Ralph and Steve and Pete.
Yes, I'm 86 years old, and I'm perfectly competent, and my children are always questioning me and telling me that I'm not so competent, and they're talking about conservatorships. What can I do?
Wow. I'll tell you what, right off the bat, for 86 or any age, you sound pretty good to me.
You're not calling her a tough old bird, are you?
Nothing like. I'm calling her someone who's making a very intelligent question, very easily understood.
So, Pete, what does an 86-year-old competent woman do when the family is trying to put her in a conservatorship?
Undermine me.
Undermine your authority.
I think that the caller is calling you as a lawyer to ask what her rights to not have the family put a conservatorship on her. I mean,
well, the nice part about it, assuming you're as lucid as you sound, and I can't see you, but I can hear you, you can get a lawyer, and you can defend this, and based on your competency, you will probably not have a conservator appointed for you on your person or your property. And if your daughters are harassing or stalking you, you can get a restraining order against them.
Can we ask why your children are concerned about you? What they're concerned about?
Well, they don't think I'm handling things as well as I could, but I believe that I am.
Anything specific?
Oh, I don't know. Nothing really specific.
Well, let's see. Are you living in a house?
Yes.
Is the house clean and maintained?
The house is very clean.
And maintained. And there's food on, you're appropriately getting food and those kind of things?
Absolutely. I still cook.
And you're seeing your doctors regularly?
All the time.
And your finances aren't in a horrible array, messed up?
My finances are fine.
So what are they afraid of?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with your kids, but you sound like one wonderful person who's perfectly capable of taking care of herself. Might be a good idea to have an initial conversation with a lawyer. That lawyer may or may not advise your taking the first step as far as the judiciary is concerned. That lawyer may tell you that you want to stay one step ahead of your children. He may say, or she may say, look, wait for something negative to happen. Wait for them to take the first move. I'm ready. I'm here to defend you. I don't know, but it might be a good idea just to have that initial consultation. And you know what? I'll bet that you feel better and more comfortable and more confident after you have that conversation.
Another approach is to get a mutual friend that knows everyone and sit down in the room and talk about it, and you explain your side of the situation. And you know, they're probably doing it because they love you and they see it differently. But it sounds like you'll be able to talk this out, and this should not end up in litigation. This is
Well, thank you very
Sounds like
much.
nobody's
I
really
appreciate
identified
your
the
help.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Josephine, thank you very much for calling Legal Help Live. Interesting. You know what? That's a question that a lot of families and a lot of people who are elderly are asking themselves and asking their family a lot. So that's not isolated. That's not unusual. Folks, we've got to take a little bit of a break. When we come back, we'll be taking your calls, answering your questions. We'll have another guest. Pete, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for answering all those questions out there. And we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be right here, Ralph and Steve on Legal Help Live.
Stay tuned for more Legal Help Live.
Our doors are open to all at St. Joseph Center, where we provide intervention, prevention, and education services. Our early childhood development centers encourage learning while parents seek work. Families receive food for the week. Case managers counsel seniors, veterans, and families. We also teach job skills to young and old. Experience the joy of helping at St. Joseph Center. We're planting hope, growing lives for all those in need.
A stranger on the phone said I won a sweepstakes, but I was smarter.
Someone tried to open a credit card in my name, but I was smarter.
A friend said I should sign my house over to him, but I was smarter.
The Los Angeles County Department of Consumer Affairs can help you avoid scams and protect your financial well-being. Don't become another victim of fraud. Call the Department of Consumer Affairs and we'll help you be
Smarter Seniors.
Before Christmas, my life was a mess. I was incarcerated, a drug addict, totally confused and didn't have any sense of direction. Some of the things they did is they gave me mock interviews, they assist me with my application. What I'm doing now, I work for a company that gives me a lot of responsibilities and it's been great, it's been good.
After my service ended, the biggest battle I faced was readjusting to civilian life.
New Directions provides services specifically for women like you who face homelessness, substance abuse, and trauma.
I joined the military to save lives. New Directions helped me save my own.
If you were honorably discharged from the military, you're entitled to veteran services. Go to ndvets.org for help.
We are back. Ralph here, Steve there, and we have a guest, Alan Munkelt, who is a criminal lawyer. In fact, you're a certified legal specialist in criminal law. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you practice up in Nevada?
Nevada City.
In Nevada City. That's like Sacramento area.
Sacramento in the foothills of the Sierra. Yep.
Sounds like a nice place to practice. And you've been doing this for a long time.
I've been up there for over 25 years. Yeah.
I'm not commenting on your age. I'm commenting on your accomplishments.
So you're involved in people who have mental problems in terms of either insanity or crimes where it requires them to have some intent to do it, and you deal with insanity, diminished capacity.
Let's define terms.
Lack of competency to appear in court.
What is insanity? What is that?
Well, insanity is where there's a settled mental condition that makes it impossible for the person to appreciate the nature and quality of the act, which would otherwise be a crime, or to control their behavior and understand that it violates moral or legal laws.
Isn't that the definition of an ex-wife?
You know, I got to tell you, Stephen, that sounds like a very, very old definition. Does that come from the old English law from the 1700s?
Well, almost 1800s, but it's basically the McNaughton rule from England, and California had moved on to legal standards for insanity that were a little more consistent with modern psychiatry and the development of knowledge about human mental states since the 1800s, but after a couple of big national events, one was the shooting of President Reagan and the other was the Dan White case in California. California and many other states went backwards from the evolving standards of mental illness and insanity and return to the more conservative, older standard, which we still have today.
So, you and I get in a dispute. I look at you and I think you're the devil, and I can really visualize you as the devil. And I take a knife out and I stab you and I kill you. And now I'm being prosecuted for murder of the devil, which is you. And my defense is I was insane at the time. I really wasn't killing you. I was killing the devil. What happens to me? What goes on in that situation?
Well,
Who testifies? What?
The legal question is really not based on that you thought it was the devil you were killing, but rather should your responsibility for the killing, for that act, be changed in some way because you did not have any rational control over your mind. So it's not the situation with a person who has a settled mental illness. It's not the situation where they visualize something in the intentional way that we think of it in our daily lives. It's that their whole reality is taken over by this illness of the brain. They cannot control it. They cannot see outside of it. It's as if they were dropped onto this planet from some other universe, and this is their world, and it doesn't match up with reality. So what the law says is, in that situation, if you can prove you're that ill, that divorced from the real awareness of what's going on around you and the rules of the world that we live in, then rather than punishing you for your wrongdoing, we should hospitalize you and treat you.
So I don't go home.
No.
If the jury,
that was my next question. You just got the defendant off. Where did he go?
Under California law, if it's a serious crime, and there's a long list of what those are, obviously murder is at the top of the list, then there's a mandatory period of state hospital treatment in one of the state hospitals like Napa or Atascadero, something of that nature. And then there's a very elaborate process for deciding whether that person who was that ill ever recovers their sanity. Unless they recover sanity, they will never get released into the community.
so I could be crazy or nuts one day under the legal definition, and 5 years later regain my sanity and be back out in the streets.
That's a possibility, but it's the system for release is very conservative in its interpretations. So there are many people who have been found not guilty by reason of insanity who are still in the state hospital 10 years, 20 years, 25 years later.
Who makes the decision to do the release?
Well, ultimately it's a judge, but the judge is required to get reports from the mental health professionals who are doing treatment at the hospital or whatever environment the person is in.
So if Steve, who just killed the devil, can convince the experts at the mental institution that he's okay now, he just had a really bad week, but he's okay now, they're going to let him out if they can convince a judge that he's okay?
Well, yes, but the hypothetical and the way you phrased it would never happen in real life. Because
well, I'm glad for that.
Because the tools that psychiatrists have at present to determine whether a person has a real significant mental illness like schizophrenia or severe depression or bipolar conditions, or the things that cause delusions and hallucinations and the really serious symptoms that are part of those illnesses. The tools they have these days are very seldom fooled, and a person with those conditions, like schizophrenia, so severe that they're completely divorced from reality, rarely recover completely.
Yeah, but the person who tried to kill President Reagan is, got out of prison.
There you go.
Is
That's good to know.
On the streets.
Unsupervised outpatient for many years.
Yeah. And there's somebody who tried to kill the highest officer in the land, and he's walking the streets of someplace. So they do get out.
There is an avenue
and
for
Danny
releasing
White,
people.
who killed Moscone and Harvey Milk, did get out of prison, and his was it was called the Twinkie defense, as I remember. He was eating too many carbohydrates, not staying on the appropriate diet, I guess, and he got out of prison. So you're
wait a second. He was sentenced to a very short prison because of that defense.
Right. But you're sugarcoating it. These people
just like a Twinkie
do get out.
The problem from the individual's point of view is more likely to be that they spend more time in the hospital than they would spend in prison.
Yes,
on the percentages, no system is perfect in how it carries out its assigned tasks. But for a person who's found not guilty by reason of insanity, they're more likely to be held longer in mental health treatment than they would be in prison. That obviously that's not true if the crime would have been a life in prison kind of case.
So what about the person who goes to prison and is not insane but has a mental illness? And what kind of treatment do they get in prison for their, quote, mental illness,
if any?
If any.
Well, that's one of the biggest problems that I see, because it's pretty clear that as a whole, our society has decided not to invest in mental health treatment for people who are out on the street on their own. Instead, we incarcerate people as a sort of the first level of mental health treatment. A very high percentage of people who end up in county jail and then in state prison have a recognized and diagnosed mental illness. The mental health treatment in state prisons in California has been so deficient for such a long period of time that a lawsuit filed 20 years ago finally led to the federal court taking over the mental health and medical care of the state prison system, which led to the case going up to the United States Supreme Court, where that court agreed that there was a 20-plus year history of such inadequate care that people were dying from lack of treatment, both medically and psychiatrically in prison.
Well, I've recently read that from the Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Statistics, that the number of inmates who are mentally ill has skyrocketed. Maybe they're just paying more attention now in the last 10 or 15 years than they were before, but the raw numbers have skyrocketed. They're estimating now, actually it was just a few years ago, about 5 years ago, 1.25 million people in state prison or jail are suffering from mental health problems. In 1998, it was only 283,000 incarcerated inmates with a mental illness. My observation from reading, but I want to go back to the phones and talk to Inez. Inez, you're calling Legal Help Live at 1-800-405-4222, and it's your turn. You're up.
Well, I heard you say actually what I was going to ask about. My child was going through some government, in his government class, about different types of defenses. And the teacher talked about a Chewbacca defense, a King Kong defense, a Matrix defense, and a Twinkie defense. And so, of course, the children thought it was very funny, but Twinkie defense, of course, stood out, and that was not elaborated on in any way. So he wanted to know what that was about.
Okay. What is that about?
Well, that phrase got picked up from the Dan White case in San Francisco, where the mayor and another person were killed. And the defense, the legal name for the defense that was used was diminished capacity, which was an alternative way of establishing something like insanity as a defense to a crime. And partly in reaction to that case, the California law was changed so that the penal code now specifically states that no defense of diminished capacity may be offered to establish a lack of criminal responsibility. But in that case, it was the consumption of lots of sugar and lots of other bad circumstances in Dan White's life that were offered as explanations for how this otherwise productive, rational, generally successful individual became so disoriented, so delusional, that they went out and killed some people.
They just sold the jury. That's what they did. He was charged with murder, first-degree murder.
Twice.
And the jury bought this humbug, kind of in the streets we'd call it BS argument. And instead of convicting him of murder, and anything will happen in front of a San Francisco jury, they reduced it down to manslaughter, and he got out in 4 or 5 or 6 years, as I recollect. So, but what's the Chewbacca defense and these other? I've never.
You know what that is?
You've got me there.
I've never heard of
Okay, Inez, we don't know what this other stuff is. Your kid's going to have to do his homework. When he's done, call us back, and let us
Okay.
know what these things are, because we don't know either.
But
Okay.
from this, you can learn that the dietitian's right. Eat protein instead of carbs, and you'll be okay.
Or not okay. Depends. Another caller. Inez, thank you very much for calling Legal Help Live. Timely homework assignment. Let's go to the phones and talk to Andy. Andy, you got a question?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
At a family event earlier this month, I was having a heated discussion with one of my older family members, and I apparently blacked out and struck them, but my public defender will not listen to a word. That I have no recollection of the event, but I have my family telling me that this is what happened, but I have no physical recollection of the event.
I just heard public defender. You're charged with a crime now?
Yes.
Okay. Help.
Sure. There is a defense, different from the insanity defense in California law, for an act that is committed while you're unconscious. And the most common experience that people may have seen that kind of gives an example of legal unconsciousness is sleepwalking. My own experience as a child was there were a couple of times when I woke up knocking on the next door neighbor's front door at 2 in the morning, having no idea how I got there. But the pain of knocking on the door woke me up. So if I had committed a crime somewhere between my bed and the neighbor's door, that would have been during a period of unconsciousness when I had no conscious control or awareness over my behavior. So it sounds like that's something which could be explored in your situation. If you have no memory of the situation, then you may have something that was illegal unconsciousness. That gets complicated a bit when you add alcohol or other drugs, including some prescription medications, to the mix. Voluntary intoxication of a drug is not a defense. So that can be related to whether you're legally unconscious or just unconscious because of drugs and don't have a defense.
You know, the practical problem is, in this situation, is the public defender's office, the deputy assigned probably has 200 cases. And they can only give you so much time. If you can afford a private counsel, you ought to seek and try and do that. Get some private lawyer who's got the time to investigate what went on, get some experts appointed, and find out, see if you've got some defenses here.
Doesn't sound like you're going to get a lot of financial help from your family, so it sounds...
Are you working?
Yes, I am.
Well, you can afford a lawyer then.
Yeah.
You need to get a private lawyer. Not that the public defender's office, if this was a high publicity case, they would get as much as they could of it. They would put a bunch of people involved in it, etc. But is this a misdemeanor or a felony?
I was just going to ask the same question.
It's being charged as a misdemeanor.
All right, so they're treating it like the run-of-the-mill case. It could affect you in your future job, licensing if you have any licenses. If you want to be a real estate broker or a doctor or anything, it could affect you. So get yourself a private lawyer and somebody who'll listen to you, who's got the time to listen to you.
We actually, Andy, I've got a lot of questions that I would ask, but since your case is still pending, I'm not going to ask you any questions that would infringe upon your right to a fair trial sometime down the line. Thank you very much for calling Legal Help Live. Interesting situation at a number of levels: a mental health issue and criminal defense issue, public defender issue. A lot of questions and concerns all wrapped up in a pretty short question. Well, guess what? I can't believe this has happened to us. Steve. It's time for us to go. We're going to see you next time on Legal Help Live. Steve, thank you so much for flying down and being with us this afternoon.
Great having you.
Glad I could do it.
And you, all you Legal Help Live people out there, we'll see you next time.